everyone, welcome to our call today as we continue down the road of the 5-step conversation. So today I'm here with our guest, Dan Presley. What's going on, Dan?
Hey, Hunter, how are you?
I'm doing great, man. I'm ready to talk a little bit about step 4, which is one of my favorite steps in the 5-step customer experience. It is presentation.
Presentation, Hunter. This is where it all kind of comes together, right? We're going to talk a little bit about a few different topics as we go through our call today around presentation. But I think the first place where we want to start here is presentation is where all the work you've put in steps 1, 2, and 3 start to come to fruition, because we're starting to develop the logic that it takes to get that customer to make a purchasing decision.
Yes, and it's really important that you remember that a couple of things become before the logic. So if you didn't get to this point, or this point feels a little tough, remember, we've got to have the emotional connection by now. We definitely should have gained some credibility, and now it's time to put it all together, as Dan said. Bring the logic of their personal situation that we gathered through form, as well as the logic from the information based on their insurance needs.
Exactly. As you're thinking about what to present as we get into step 4, this is where it matters when you are thinking about what their rent payment is, what their mortgage payment is, whether or not they own their home or not. All of those things are coming together for this presentation. So I think it's worth saying at this point, Hunter, if you don't have extensive information about your customer at this point in the process, you're fighting a losing battle in your presentation.
Yeah, another big one here, just to kind of a checkpoint, is do you remember the names of the people not involved in the conversation who are really, really important to the logic and the emotional connection, like the person's significant other, maybe coworkers or the place they work, the names of their children, the age of their children, and most importantly, what do they have in common with your kids if you have kids, or what do they have in common with you? Again, building some congruency there with the form conversation.
Absolutely. So as we get into step 4 and start working our way through this, what we are going to do is we're going to go through the key rules of our presentation, and we're going to break each of those down, and we're going to wrap up by talking about some, I guess I would call them common mistakes or items that we frequently see missed in step 4 that'll improve your success rate. So as we get into these rules, we're going to start with probably the most important rule, or the best way to improve your ability in the presentation, Hunter, and that's you got to get face-to-face with your customers.
Yeah, guys, 55% of what makes someone buy is face-to-face, and I fight this one with our team a lot, so I know you're dealing with it as well. I can't overstress how important it is to sell the importance of an in-person appointment, and if it's not logical to do it in person, Good Neighbor Connect. So one of the coaching tips I would have for you all is, number 1, listen to your team, sell an in-person appointment. Remember, the minute that they like you, you like them, and you can do it. You need to sell an appointment, but Good Neighbor Connect. You know, one of the things we actually just worked on with our team was, hey, do you know how to set up Good Neighbor Connect? Do you know how to share the screens? Do you know how to troubleshoot? Because if they're not comfortable with Good Neighbor Connect, they're not going to offer it to the customer.
You're exactly right, Hunter, and I think that's a great training point for agents and team leaders on the call. Sit everybody down one-on-one. We just did this. Make them run a Good Neighbor Connect appointment with you and play it out, so that they can start from beginning to finish and make sure they understand the resources that are available if there is some sort of technical issue to help the customer.
Yeah. The next one I think is really, really important. As you all know, my main office is in Virginia. We have some of the lowest premiums in the country. And so if I think back to when I was a newer agent, as we were growing our business, I think about, I looked at how much I had to spend per quote, how much I had to spend per unit or customer that we brought in, and what I need to generate basically in revenue per customer. And so the next rule is all around multi-lining. And so from a rule of thumb, I want a presentation of at least 3 lines of business with every customer based on need. So it is based on need, but I want at least 3 lines presented, and I want your team thinking that way.
Correct, and I think that's a pain point for a lot of team members, and I think the reason for that pain point, Hunter, is maybe they're just not super comfortable with what they should present. But I'm going to take that all the way back to what we've already said, which is that's where the logic comes into play, right? That's why you need to work on your step 2. You need to work on your form and build those emotional connections, because if you do a good job, for example, you find out that customer rents their home, they've got a MacBook, and their rent payment is $1,500, you have all the logic there to make that presentation of the renters, the PAP, the auto, and the disability. It makes perfect sense sense. So I think team members struggle there because they're not getting all the right information up front, which is what makes that 3-line presentation more difficult.
And guys, when we think about our team and them dictating their hourly rate, it's much better to multi-line a customer that you have on the phone or that's in person than to write one line of business or maybe two and then have to call another 100 people before you get another customer or prospect on the phone and sell them one line. Go 2, 3, even 4 lines deep on every household. And again, it's not just that they have to buy 3 lines. I want them presenting at least 3 lines based on needs.
Yeah, Hunter, we talk about this a ton in training, and I tell our team members, especially when they're new, I don't care if the customer buys the 3rd line or the 2nd line or not from you. It doesn't matter. I care more about you getting the reps and the practice in presenting that line of business and getting more comfortable in that space.
Yep. The next rule we want to talk about, and I think this one's really important. We always hear that quote apples to apples, that type of thing. That customers have been trained to ask for that. That's something that we never do. That is, if we quote apples to apples, and I want to take quote out of our lingo period, but if we present apples to apples, we are assuming that the prior insurance carrier or the prior representative did the right thing for the customer and nothing's changed since that interaction. So we just know from doing this a lot, that's just not true. And so it is really important that you find what's in it for the customer, what's in it for them in this presentation.
Exactly. You really need to break down not just what the products are per se, but how the customer is impacted or what the expectation is if they have a claim. I feel like we sell kind of backwards by mistake a lot of times, Hunter, where we're talking about all the great things that coverage A, B, and C do, but don't actually relate them to the customer's life and personal situation, which is another way to drive that wedge and differentiate ourselves from their prior carrier.
Yeah, and if you think about, let's think about sports, for example. If I were a highly sought after recruit and I was looking at University A's program and University B's program, and I went to University A, I got to see their cafeteria, their strength training program, their uniforms, and believe me, being a former athlete, the shoes and the uniforms definitely matter. We were dying to get certain vendors to sponsor us, but the stadium's the same, the coaching's the same, the practice plan's the same. If everything were the same when I went down to B, and let's say B was an hour away, why would I even take the time to go see B if I'm getting the exact same thing? Yeah. So it is really important that we're talking about what's different between us and them and what we're doing for the customer in the event of a claim that Company A is not doing.
Exactly, and kind of going back to your point, Hunter, I feel like it's a huge miss on our part if we are quoting the same coverage. I mean, I can probably think of a handful, maybe, of times in my career where I've sat down with a customer and looked at their coverage and said, yeah, you know what you had before was perfectly fine. It's so rare that we find somebody that's got everything really tailored to their personal situation and what they've got going on in their lives and their needs. We got to make that change, and that's a huge, huge important thing that we need to remember here in step 4.
Yeah. So next rule, one of the things we know when we look out at society, most people just aren't that great at math, right?
Yes.
And especially when they're thinking already using up a lot of their brain waves related to something like insurance that's complicated in itself. So when we are presenting our 3 lines or more based on need, we are going to present what the products do, and we are going to present one monthly bill to the customer. And we are going to present that monthly bill to the customer or monthly premium. We are going to then state savings annually if there are savings. And then we are going to restate premiums down to daily if we are talking related to financial services.
Exactly. $30 a month higher means you're paying $1 a day more. That's essentially how we want to break that down. And let's talk briefly about why that is. So one of the most important things that happens there at the point of sale, Hunter, is the customer has to reconcile in their mind what's happening in their wallet. In order for them to make that decision and say yes, they need to know what's going to happen in their wallet. If you tell them that this option is 117 plus 14 plus 958 plus 751, but if they change this, it goes to 113 plus 958 plus 1756. You have lost that customer forever. They are so confused, they're going to tell you they need to think about it, and you're never going to hear from them.
Dan, you just lost me, so I know you're losing the customer.
Exactly.
The other one is saying a percentage related to discounts. Dan, that saves you 25%, or this saves you 30%. Again, you have to do the math.
Yep.
And when it ties to adding additional protection for your customer, remember, we're talking about the protection strategy, things like life insurance. Dan, to protect Harrison Bennett, God forbid something were to happen to you, to protect them and Samantha, that's going to cost you $1 a day.
Exactly.
Okay, so we got to speak in the customer's lingo and the way they think.
Exactly. The psychology behind this is that the customer can sit there and think, okay, $1 a day, what do I blow $1 a day on in my life that I can, cut out or change so that I can reconcile this protection strategy into my insurance plan?
Yep. The last thing we want to talk about is just creating value around doing business with us. So this is where your systems come into play, your hard work, your training, the relationships that you have in your community, all those things get tied together. So if you're someone that's viewing this and you've never been a part of a life insurance claim, you've never been a part of a home fire where someone loses all their memories and things that is a lifetime of memories related to their family or children or other things like that. Believe me, there's a big difference in calling an office or calling someone that like, and trust than calling an 800 number whose job it is to make sure you're telling the truth.
Exactly. And I think it goes even deeper and further than that. I mean, I think obviously you want to have the relationship with your customers, but you want to sell the things that you and your office do for your community, right? That sets us apart. We were just talking about this recently. When we do events for the community or things that are philanthropic or volunteer as a team, we want to tell customers that we're giving back. We want them to know that and to see that and appreciate that, because they're not going to see some of these other call center carriers doing those kind of things.
And I think the last point I'll make around that is you all are on this call or watching this call because you train hard. There's not a lot of places out there that are investing in themselves, that are training and preparing to give proper advice to customers. So if you're watching this and you're doing that, that's something to be proud of, and that's something you definitely should communicate to customers, because that's unique to our industry. It shouldn't be unique,
right,
but it is unique to the industry. So you should be letting the customers know how you work to be prepared to satisfy or take care of their needs for them and their family.
Yeah, if you've built a competent, world-class team, you need to sell your customers on the fact, or your prospects on the fact, that you've got a world-class team.
Yep. Well, all right, guys. Well, that is step 4, presentation. Look for us next time. We're going to be talking about step 5, which is the close. Dan, thanks for joining me.
Anytime,
Thank you, everybody. We'll see you again next time.
Thanks, everybody.